In a quiet suburban neighborhood, where tree-lined streets curved gently into cul-de-sacs, Alex Carter lived a peaceful life. Their home wasn't the biggest or fanciest on the block, but it was cozy and well-maintained. What really stood out was the backyard, a small oasis with a sparkling blue pool that caught the sunlight just right. It was Alex's favorite spot to unwind after long days at work. They took pride in keeping it clean and inviting, not only for themselves, but also because they knew how much appearances mattered in this community. The neighborhood fell under the watchful eye of the Homeowners Association, or HOA, as everyone called it. The HOA had rules, lots of them. From the color of front doors to the height of hedges, nothing escaped their scrutiny. Most people followed these guidelines without complaint, happy to keep their property values high. But Alex was different. Having moved from a bustling city where privacy was sacred, they valued their personal space above all else. Still, Alex made sure to stay on the HOA's good side by maintaining their yard perfectly and paying their dues on time. Enter Karen Thompson, a woman who seemed to take her role in the HOA far too seriously. She wasn't officially part of the board, but she acted like she ran the place. With her clipboard perpetually tucked under one arm and a sour expression etched onto her face, Karen patrolled the neighborhood like a hawk searching for prey. Neighbors often joked about her behind closed doors, calling her HOA Karen because of her tendency to meddle in things that weren't her business. Some even whispered that she thrived on drama, always looking for someone to scold or report. Karen's latest obsession: pools. Specifically, making sure every pool in the neighborhood met some vague set of standards she claimed were necessary for safety and cleanliness. Whether these rules actually existed in the official HOA handbook remained questionable, but Karen didn't seem to care. If she said it was important, then it must be true, or so she thought. Alex first noticed Karen lurking around their backyard during one of her infamous inspections. At first, they assumed she'd simply been admiring the landscaping. But when Karen started asking intrusive questions about the pool's maintenance schedule and chemical levels, Alex realized something was off. They politely explained that a professional service handled everything and assured her there was no need to worry. Karen didn't look convinced. Instead, she pressed harder, demanding access to test the water herself. This felt wrong to Alex. Why should a stranger poke around their private property based on some made-up rule? They kindly but firmly told Karen no, standing their ground despite her growing frustration. As Karen stormed off, muttering under her breath, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that this wouldn't be the end of it. Little did they know, Karen's determination to assert control over the neighborhood would soon spiral into something far more dramatic and ridiculous than anyone could have imagined. Over the next few days, Karen's presence loomed larger than ever. She didn't show up at Alex's door again, at least not yet, but her tactics shifted to something more insidious. Notes began appearing on Alex's front porch, each one written in neat, angry handwriting on plain white paper. The messages were passive-aggressive and accusatory, filled with thinly veiled threats about fines or penalties if Alex continued to ignore HOA policies. One note read, "It's disappointing that you refuse to cooperate for the good of the community. Your actions could jeopardize everyone's safety and property values." Another simply said, "Compliance isn't optional. Ignoring the rules won't make them go away." Each time Alex found a new note, they felt a mix of irritation and disbelief. Who did Karen think she was? A neighborhood dictator? Things took an even stranger turn when emails started flooding Alex's inbox. Karen had copied every single resident in the neighborhood, turning what should have been a private matter into a public spectacle. In bold letters, she accused Alex of negligence and uncooperativeness, painting them as someone who didn't care about their neighbors or the community. Her tone was dramatic, almost theatrical, as though she were auditioning for a soap opera. To Alex's surprise, not everyone fell for Karen's act. Several neighbors reached out privately to offer support. One elderly woman named Mrs. Peterson sent a kind message saying, Don't let her get to you, dear. We all know how she is. Another neighbor, Tom, texted Alex to say, "You're doing the right thing standing your ground. Most of us are just too scared to speak up." Despite the encouragement, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that Karen was far from finished. Her behavior was escalating, and it was clear she wasn't used to being challenged. For someone like Karen, who thrived on control and authority, Alex's refusal to comply must have felt like a personal affront. And if there was one thing Alex knew about people like Karen, it was that they didn't take rejection well. Determined not to be caught off guard, Alex decided to take extra precautions. They installed security cameras around the perimeter of their property, including one discreetly aimed at the pool area. At first, the idea of needing surveillance seemed excessive, but after dealing with Karen's relentless harassment, it felt like a necessary step. Better safe than sorry, Alex reasoned. As they set up the cameras, Alex couldn't help but wonder what Karen might do next. Would she try to strong-arm them further, or would she find some other way to retaliate? Either way, Alex knew they had to stay vigilant. This wasn't just about protecting their privacy anymore. It was about setting boundaries and showing Karen that not everyone would bow to her demands. Unbeknownst to Alex, Karen was already plotting her next move. Frustrated by Alex's resistance and determined to prove her point, she decided to take matters into her own hands. What she didn't realize was that her actions would cross a line no one in the neighborhood could ignore, and that Alex's newly installed cameras would capture every moment of it. The next day, Alex's suspicion that Karen wouldn't let things go proved to be true. Just as they were finishing their morning coffee, there was a sharp knock at the door. Standing on the porch, clipboard in hand, and wearing an expression that could curdle milk, was Karen. She wasted no time getting to the point. "I'm here about your pool," she announced, her tone clipped and authoritative. "The HOA requires weekly inspections to ensure chemical levels are within regulation. It's for everyone's safety." Alex blinked, caught off guard by the sudden declaration. "Weekly inspections? That's news to me," they replied calmly, leaning against the doorway. "I've never seen anything like that in the HOA guidelines." Karen pursed her lips, clearly annoyed at being questioned. "Well, it's not something we advertise widely, but it's standard procedure. I need to test your water today." Alex shook their head, keeping their voice steady. "I'm sorry, but I can't allow that. My pool is professionally maintained, and I have reports from my service provider if you'd like to see them. There's really no need for additional testing." Karen's face turned red, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "This isn't optional, Alex," she snapped, pointing her pen toward the backyard, as if trying to assert dominance. "If you don't comply, it reflects poorly on the entire community. Do you want to be responsible for lowering property values?" Alex crossed their arms, unfazed by her theatrics. "I understand your concerns, but this is my private property. Unless you can show me written proof of this so-called policy, and I mean official documentation, I'm not comfortable letting you inspect my pool." For a moment, Karen looked like she might explode. Her jaw tightened, and her grip on the clipboard became almost painful to watch. Then, with a huff, she straightened up and glared at Alex. "Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you. This isn't over." And with that, she spun on her heel and marched back to her car, slamming the door shut behind her. As Alex watched her drive away, they couldn't help but feel uneasy. Something about Karen's reaction felt off. Most people would have backed down after being politely yet firmly refused, but Karen seemed more determined than ever. It was as though denying her access had only fueled her desire to prove herself right. Over the next few hours, Alex found themselves replaying the conversation in their head. They decided to double-check the HOA handbook just to be sure, flipping through its pages carefully. To their relief, there was no mention of mandatory pool inspections, or anything remotely close to what Karen had described. Still, the encounter left a sour taste in their mouth. Later that evening, while lounging by the pool with a book, Alex glanced toward the fence line and sighed. The neighborhood was supposed to be peaceful, a place where people respected each other's boundaries. But Karen's behavior was starting to chip away at that illusion. Little did Alex know, this was only the beginning of what would become a bizarre and escalating feud, one that would eventually involve late-night trespassing, emergency calls, and even handcuffs. It was late one evening when Alex's phone buzzed with an alert from their newly installed security system. The notification read, "Motion detected near pool area." At first, Alex thought it might be a stray animal or maybe the wind knocking something over. But curiosity got the better of them, and they decided to check the live feed from the camera. What they saw on the screen made their blood run cold. There, in the glow of the backyard lights, was Karen Thompson. She had somehow entered the yard through the side gate, which Alex realized must not have been latched properly, and was now standing by the pool. In her hands, she held a small plastic container filled with testing strips. Without hesitation, Karen dipped one of the strips into the water, her movements deliberate and purposeful. Alex couldn't believe what they were witnessing. This wasn't just nosiness. This was outright trespassing. Their heart raced as they grabbed their phone and opened the outdoor speaker system connected to the security setup. Taking a deep breath, they pressed the button and spoke firmly. "Karen, I know you're there. You need to leave my property right now." For a split second, Karen froze, clearly startled. Then she turned toward the camera, her face twisting into a mask of indignation. "I'm just doing my job," she shouted, gesturing wildly with the testing strip still in her hand. "You've left me no choice but to handle this myself." "This isn't your job," Alex replied, keeping their voice calm but firm. "You're trespassing on private property. Leave now, or I'll call the police." Karen scoffed, crossing her arms defiantly. "Go ahead and call them. See if I care. Someone has to make sure this pool is safe for the neighborhood." Her words dripped with sarcasm, but Alex wasn't intimidated. They ended the call and immediately dialed 911, explaining the situation to the dispatcher in measured tones. While waiting for the police to arrive, Alex kept an eye on Karen through the camera feed. To their astonishment, she continued poking around the pool area, seemingly unconcerned about the trouble she was causing for herself. Then came the moment that sealed her fate. As Karen leaned over to inspect the filter system, she accidentally knocked over a decorative ceramic planter sitting near the edge of the pool. It shattered into pieces on the ground, scattering shards of pottery everywhere. Alex winced at the sight. That planter had been a gift from a close friend, and while it wasn't worth a fortune, it held sentimental value. By the time the police arrived, Karen was still standing by the pool, clutching her testing strips like some sort of misplaced badge of authority. Two officers approached the scene, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Alex met them at the side gate, explaining everything that had happened while showing them the live footage from the security cameras. Karen, meanwhile, launched into a tirade. "This is ridiculous," she exclaimed, pointing accusingly at Alex. "They're refusing to follow HOA rules, and now they're trying to paint me as the bad guy." The officers listened patiently before asking to review the video evidence. Watching the footage, they quickly pieced together what had happened. Karen hadn't just trespassed. She had caused property damage too. When confronted with the undeniable proof, Karen's defiance crumbled, replaced by stammering excuses. "We'll need you to come with us," one officer said finally, gesturing toward their patrol car. Karen protested loudly, but it was no use. Handcuffs clicked into place as she was led away, leaving Alex standing in stunned silence. What had started as a minor disagreement over pool inspections had spiraled into something far more serious and far more absurd than anyone could have predicted. Word of Karen's arrest spread through the neighborhood faster than anyone could have imagined. By the time the sun rose the next morning, it felt like everyone knew what had happened. Some residents whispered about it over coffee, while others exchanged texts and messages in group chats. The phrase, "Karen got arrested," became the talk of the cul-de-sac, sparking reactions ranging from disbelief to quiet glee. When Alex stepped outside to grab the newspaper, they could feel eyes watching them from behind curtains. A few neighbors waved awkwardly, unsure how to approach the situation. Mrs. Peterson, however, was more direct. She walked over with her walker, a knowing smile on her face. "Good for you, dear," she said softly, patting Alex on the arm. That woman needed someone to stand up to her. Despite the support, not everyone sided with Alex. Some residents were quick to criticize, claiming that refusing to let Karen inspect the pool had caused unnecessary drama. "If you just cooperated, none of this would have happened," one neighbor muttered during a chance encounter at the mailbox. Others echoed similar sentiments online, posting vague comments about how Alex should have handled things differently. It was clear that Karen still had her defenders, though their numbers seemed smaller than before. Meanwhile, the HOA scrambled to contain the fallout. An email landed in everyone's inbox late that afternoon, a carefully worded statement attempting to distance themselves from the incident. "The HOA does not condone trespassing or any illegal activity," it read. "We encourage all members to resolve disputes peacefully and respectfully." The message went on to remind residents of community guidelines, but made no mention of Karen's actions, or whether weekly pool inspections even existed. For Karen, the consequences were piling up. Not only had she been charged with trespassing and property damage, but news of her arrest also humiliated her in front of the very people she sought to impress. When she returned home later that day, after being released on bail, she found her yard decorated with sarcastic signs left by anonymous pranksters. One read, "Congratulations, Inspector Extraordinaire." Another simply said, "Trespasser lies here." But Karen wasn't ready to admit defeat. Furious and humiliated, she took to social media to vent her anger. Posting under a pseudonym, she ranted about how Alex was ruining the neighborhood and accused them of spreading lies to turn everyone against her. Her posts reeked of desperation, blaming everyone but herself for the mess she had created. Predictably, her online crusade only deepened the divide between her and the rest of the community. Alex, meanwhile, tried to focus on moving forward. They filed a formal police report detailing the property damage caused by the broken planter and asked for documentation of the incident to use if needed later. Knowing Karen wouldn't back down easily, Alex also consulted a lawyer about obtaining a restraining order. If Karen continued to harass them, online or otherwise, they wanted to be prepared. As the days passed, the neighborhood settled into an uneasy calm. While some residents avoided taking sides altogether, others began questioning the HOA's authority and Karen's role in enforcing its rules. For years, people had quietly tolerated her overreach, too afraid to challenge her. But now, inspired by Alex's courage, whispers of dissent grew louder. Could this bizarre incident spark real change in the community? For Alex, the experience had been exhausting, but also empowering. Standing up to Karen hadn't been easy, but seeing the cracks form in her facade gave them hope. Still, they couldn't shake the feeling that Karen's pride wouldn't let her walk away quietly. Whatever came next, Alex knew they'd have to stay vigilant. After all, someone like Karen didn't give up without a fight. As the seasons changed, so did the neighborhood. The crisp autumn air brought with it a renewed sense of unity among the residents. Leaves crunched underfoot as families strolled through the cul-de-sac, admiring the freshly painted mailboxes and newly planted flower beds that had become symbols of their collective effort. For Alex, this transformation was both heartwarming and surreal. What had started as a personal battle over privacy had blossomed into something far greater, a community learning to stand up for itself. Karen, meanwhile, faded further into the background. Her once loud presence became little more than a distant memory. She stopped attending HOA meetings altogether, and her attempts to stir controversy online fizzled out when no one responded. Eventually, she sold her home and moved away, leaving behind only whispers of her name in passing conversations. Some speculated she'd relocated to a stricter HOA where her controlling tendencies might find an audience. Others simply didn't care. Either way, her departure marked the end of an era. In her absence, the neighborhood thrived. The HOA board implemented several reforms inspired by Alex's suggestions, focusing on transparency and fairness rather than micromanagement. Rules about lawn decorations, holiday lights, and even pool maintenance were relaxed, giving residents more freedom to personalize their properties. Monthly newsletters replaced Karen's dreaded inspection notices, filled instead with cheerful updates about upcoming events and volunteer opportunities. Alex found themselves at the heart of these changes, not because they sought attention, but because their actions had earned trust. Neighbors often turned to them for advice or mediation when disputes arose, knowing Alex valued fairness above all else. At first, this role felt unfamiliar. After all, Alex had moved here seeking peace and quiet. But over time, they grew to appreciate the connections they'd formed. Helping others navigate challenges gave them a deeper sense of purpose, one they hadn't expected but now cherished. One chilly November evening, the neighborhood gathered for its annual Thanksgiving potluck. Tables stretched across the community center, laden with homemade dishes ranging from savory casseroles to decadent pies. As Alex stood near the dessert table, chatting with Mrs. Peterson and Tom, someone tapped a spoon against a glass to get everyone's attention. It was Linda, the HOA president, holding a small plaque in her hands. Before we dig in, she began with a warm smile. We want to take a moment to thank someone who has truly made a difference this year. She gestured toward Alex, who froze mid-bite of pumpkin pie. Alex has shown us all what it means to stand up for what's right, while still fostering kindness and understanding. This neighborhood is better because of you. The room erupted in applause as Alex accepted the plaque, their cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Inscribed on it were the words, "For courage, integrity, and community spirit." Though Alex wasn't one for accolades, they couldn't deny the lump in their throat as they looked around the room. These people, once strangers bound only by proximity, now felt like family. After the event, Alex returned home, placing the plaque on a shelf near the front door. They stepped outside onto the patio, gazing at the pool that had sparked the entire ordeal. Its surface shimmered under the soft glow of string lights, reflecting the calm that now defined their life. It was hard to believe how much had changed since Karen's first unwelcome visit. But Alex knew the real victory wasn't just about defeating Karen. It was about empowering others to reclaim their voices. By refusing to back down, they had reminded everyone that rules existed to serve people, not control them. And in doing so, they had helped create a space where respect and cooperation outweighed fear and intimidation. As Alex settled into their favorite chair by the pool, wrapping a blanket around their shoulders, they allowed themselves a rare moment of reflection. Life wasn't perfect, no neighborhood ever was, but it was good. Better than good, in fact. It was peaceful. For the first time in a long while, Alex felt truly at home. The neighborhood began to feel different in the weeks that followed. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but subtle signs of change were everywhere. People who had once tiptoed around Karen's demands now walked a little taller, speaking up when something didn't sit right with them. The HOA meetings, which used to be dominated by Karen's voice and opinions, became more balanced discussions where actual concerns, like improving sidewalks or organizing community events, finally took center stage. Alex noticed this shift firsthand. Neighbors who had previously kept their distance started reaching out more often, not just to express support, but also to share their own frustrations about living under Karen's shadow for so long. One evening, as Alex was watering the plants in their front yard, Tom from across the street stopped by with a six-pack of soda. "Thought you could use this," he said with a grin, handing over the drinks. "You've earned it." Their conversation turned serious as Tom admitted how much he admired Alex's courage. "Honestly, I think most of us have been scared of Karen for years," he confessed. "But seeing you stand your ground, that gave us hope. Maybe we don't have to put up with her nonsense anymore." Encouraged by these interactions, Alex decided to take things a step further. They joined the HOA board, not because they enjoyed politics, but because they wanted to help create lasting change. At their first meeting, Alex proposed revising some of the association's outdated rules, particularly those that felt invasive or unnecessary. To everyone's surprise, the motion passed without much resistance. Even longtime members seemed eager to move away from the rigid enforcement style Karen had championed. Meanwhile, Karen's attempts to regain control grew increasingly desperate and increasingly ineffective. Her private Facebook group, Concerned Neighbors, fizzled out after only a handful of posts. Most residents ignored her invitations, and those who joined quickly left when they realized it was just another platform for her complaints. When she tried to rally support at a local coffee shop, openly criticizing Alex and the HOA board, she was met with awkward silence. Some patrons even changed tables to avoid being drawn into her drama. Still, Karen refused to admit defeat. She filed a counter-complaint against Alex, accusing them of harassment and defamation. But without evidence to back up her claims, the allegations fell flat. The restraining order Alex had secured made it clear that Karen was the one crossing boundaries, not the other way around. Frustrated and humiliated, she retreated further into isolation, spending most of her time indoors and avoiding public spaces. As summer rolled on, the neighborhood embraced its newfound sense of freedom. A group of families organized a block party, complete with games, music, and food trucks. For the first time in years, laughter filled the streets without fear of judgment or interference. Even Mrs. Peterson, who rarely left her house, joined in the festivities, bringing homemade cookies that disappeared within minutes. Alex attended the event, feeling a mix of pride and relief. They hadn't set out to become a neighborhood hero, but there was no denying the impact they'd had. Conversations flowed easily now, unburdened by the tension Karen's presence had always created. When someone jokingly called Alex the pool protector, others cheered, raising their cups in mock celebration. But Alex knew better than to rest on their laurels. While Karen's influence had waned, she was still capable of stirring trouble if given the chance. With their lawyer's guidance, Alex explored the possibility of filing a civil lawsuit against her for emotional distress and property damage. Though the process would take time, it was a necessary step to ensure Karen couldn't retaliate in the future. By late summer, the neighborhood felt like a different place altogether. Residents worked together to repaint the community bulletin board, plant flowers in shared green spaces, and plan a fall festival. Ideas flowed freely, unhindered by fear of criticism or retribution. What had once been a tightly controlled environment was now a thriving community built on mutual respect and cooperation. Through it all, Alex remained humble, aware that real change came from collective effort rather than individual action. Still, they couldn't deny the role they'd played in sparking that change. By standing firm against Karen's overreach, they had inspired others to do the same, and in doing so, had helped transform their corner of suburbia into something truly special. The fallout from Karen's arrest continued to ripple through the neighborhood, but Alex wasn't about to sit back and let her rewrite the narrative. Determined to hold her accountable for her actions, Alex decided it was time to take things further. With the support of a few trusted neighbors who had grown tired of Karen's antics, they drafted a formal complaint to the HOA board. The letter laid out everything in detail: Karen's repeated attempts to intimidate Alex, her unauthorized entry into their backyard, the property damage she caused, and her misuse of the HOA name to justify her behavior. To make their case even stronger, Alex attached screenshots of Karen's passive-aggressive emails, copies of the notes she'd left on their porch, and most damning of all, the security footage showing her trespassing. It was an airtight presentation, leaving no room for doubt about what had happened. When the HOA board received the complaint, they were caught in an awkward position. On one hand, Karen's actions were clearly unacceptable. On the other, she had been such a vocal advocate for the association that disciplining her felt risky. After hours of tense deliberation, the board issued a decision. Karen would be stripped of any unofficial inspector duties she had assumed. Furthermore, they announced stricter oversight to ensure no resident could abuse their role. or claim authority they didn't actually have. Karen was livid. When she received the news, she stormed into the next HOA meeting, demanding answers. Her face was flushed with anger as she accused the board of betraying her. "I've done nothing but protect this community," she shouted, slamming her fist on the table. "And now you're throwing me under the bus because of one person's lies." Her outburst only made matters worse. The board reminded her that trespassing and vandalism were serious offenses unrelated to anyone's lies. They also pointed out that her behavior had damaged the HOA's reputation, something they couldn't ignore. By the end of the meeting, Karen was officially barred from participating in any HOA-related activities until further notice. For someone who thrived on control, this was a devastating blow. But Karen wasn't finished fighting. Emboldened by frustration, she doubled down on her smear campaign against Alex. She started a private Facebook group called Concerned Neighbors, inviting like-minded residents to join her crusade. In posts filled with exaggerations and half-truths, she painted Alex as a troublemaker who refused to follow rules and blamed them for dividing the community. However, her efforts backfired spectacularly when screenshots of her inflammatory messages leaked online. Residents who had previously stayed neutral began questioning why Karen seemed so obsessed with targeting Alex. Meanwhile, Alex focused on building bridges rather than burning them. They hosted a casual backyard barbecue, inviting neighbors over to share food and conversation. It wasn't just about mending fences, it was about fostering genuine connections within the community. Many attendees expressed gratitude for Alex's courage in standing up to Karen, admitting they had long resented her bullying tactics but never knew how to address it. As the weeks went by, Karen's influence dwindled. Without her clipboard or self-appointed authority, she became increasingly isolated. Some neighbors stopped speaking to her altogether, while others openly mocked her behind her back. Even her closest allies began distancing themselves, unwilling to be associated with her toxic behavior. For Alex, the shift in dynamics was both satisfying and bittersweet. While they were glad to see Karen's power diminish, they couldn't help but feel sorry for her. Once a force to be reckoned with, she now seemed small and defeated, a cautionary tale of what happens when ego overrides reason. Still, Alex knew better than to let their guard down completely. Karen might have lost this battle, but she was still capable of causing trouble. With a lawyer's advice fresh in mind, Alex secured a restraining order, ensuring Karen couldn't come near their property or harass them online without facing legal consequences. It was a final step in reclaiming their peace of mind and protecting their home. As summer settled over the neighborhood, life slowly returned to normal. But beneath the surface, something had changed. Residents were more willing to speak up about unreasonable demands from the HOA, and discussions about revising outdated policies gained momentum. What had started as a dispute over a pool inspection had sparked a quiet revolution, one that promised to reshape the community for the better. And at the center of it all stood Alex, proving that sometimes standing your ground can lead to meaningful change.